June 17, 1944. 4:23 in the afternoon. 3 kilometers south of Normandy. The sun hangs low enough to cast long shadows across the shattered fields. Smoke drifts lazily over trampled wheat. Dust floats in the air like a thin veil, catching the light in soft golden streaks. What had once been farmland is now churned mud and broken stone. SS Sturmbannführer Klaus Richter crouches behind what remains of a farmhouse wall. The structure is no longer a building, just fragments, jagged stones, splintered beams, a doorway that opens into nothing. His uniform, once jet black and pressed to perfection, is gray now, gray with plaster, gray with ash, gray with the residue of war. There are darker stains too, but he refuses to let his eyes linger there. His hands are trembling, not from fear. Fear had been trained out of him years ago. At least, that's what he believed. Fear was weakness. Fear was for lesser men. What he feels now is something far more unfamiliar. Disbelief. 50 meters away, across flattened wheat and overturned earth, British infantry move forward in a straight line. They are not charging. They are not shouting. They are not even hurrying. They walk, measured, deliberate, rifles steady, faces set. It is the walk of men who have already decided something. Richter swallows. His throat is dry. He slowly rises from behind the rubble and lifts his hands above his head. The gesture is universal. Hands up, weapons down. The silent contract between enemies that says, I am no longer a threat. Around him, 8 other SS officers follow suit. Pistols drop into the dirt. Fingers spread wide. The choreography of surrender unfolds exactly as it is thousands of times across Europe. They have seen it from the other side countless times. Now they perform it. The British soldiers do not slow down. They do not acknowledge the raised hands. They continue walking. And in that quiet refusal, more powerful than any gunshot, something inside Klaus Richter fractures. Because the rules are supposed to work. Aren't they? If what happened in that field challenges what you think you know about World War II, stay with the story. Because what unfolded in Normandy in June 1944 wasn't just about tactics or territory. It was about what happens when the rules of civilization are broken and then tested. To understand that moment, we have to go back. Klaus Richter joined the Waffen-SS in 1940. He was 23 years old, ambitious, disciplined, convinced he was stepping into history's most elite brotherhood. The propaganda had been relentless. The SS were not ordinary soldiers. They were ideological warriors. The cutting edge of a new order. Training films contrasted soft Wehrmacht troops with the ruthless clarity of the SS. Where regular army units hesitated, the SS acted. Where others showed mercy, the SS demonstrated resolve. The message was unmistakable. The Geneva Conventions were weakness disguised as law. Sympathy was decay. Strength defined morality. The strong shaped history. The weak were shaped by it. Richter believed every word. Training reinforced it. Physical endurance beyond exhaustion. Indoctrination sessions that blurred the line between soldier and political crusader. The runes on his collar were not just insignia. They were proof of superiority. By 1944, he had served on the Eastern Front. He had seen villages burn. He had issued orders that ensured prisoners did not survive capture. He had rationalized it all as necessity. In his mind, mercy was a luxury the strong did not need. He was also taught something else, something subtle but powerful. The Allies were constrained, especially the British. They were portrayed as gentlemen soldiers, bound by outdated codes of honor, too civilized for total war, too respectful of international law, to do what victory truly required. The SS expected to give no quarter, but they assumed they would receive it. This was an hypocrisy in their worldview. It was hierarchy. They were the dominant force. The rules existed to protect the weak from them. And if circumstances ever shifted, surely those same rules would protect them in return. It never occurred to Richter that restraint was not weakness. It was a choice, and choices can be withdrawn. June 6, 1944. The Allied landings begin. Normandy transforms overnight into a furnace. Hedgerows become fortresses. Fields become graveyards. Every sunken lane hides a machine gun nest. Every orchard might conceal a mortar team. Among the German units resisting the advance is the 12th SS Panzer Division Hitlerjugend. Young, fanatical, fiercely loyal. They fight hard. They also leave something else behind. Allied soldiers begin discovering their captured comrades executed after surrender. Bodies in ditches. Prisoners shot with hands bound. The killings at the Abbaye d'Ardennes shocked Canadian troops, in particular. These are not battlefield casualties. They are deliberate. Word spreads fast. Infantrymen don't need official reports to understand what they are seeing. They bury their friends. They count the bullet wounds in the backs of skulls. They are told to follow the Geneva Conventions. They are told to treat prisoners properly. They are told to maintain discipline. But anger is building. By mid-June, something shifts at the lowest levels. No written order is issued. No general stands before the men and declares, "Do not take SS prisoners." But in the hedgerows, decisions begin to change. Wehrmacht soldiers who surrender are disarmed and sent to the rear. SS soldiers, sometimes are not. Sometimes a sergeant accepts the surrender. Sometimes he looks away. Sometimes an officer turns his back for exactly long enough. It is not universal, but it is real. The first time Richter hears of it, he dismisses it. A young SS officer cut off during a British advance throws down his rifle and shouts, "Kamerad!" A British lance corporal glances at the runes on his collar, looks at his sergeant. The sergeant shakes his head once. They walk past him. The young officer stands alone in the open field for hours. Artillery eventually finds him. Richter tells himself it's an anomaly. Then it happens again and again. By June 20th, SS officers encountering British troops are invoking the very laws they once mocked. "Geneva Convention," they shout. "You must take prisoners." The irony hangs heavy in the air. Accounts from British and Canadian units describe bitter exchanges. International law, a Canadian sergeant reportedly replies, "Where was international law when our boys were shot?" The SS tried different tactics. "We were following orders. We had no choice." I can provide intelligence. The men who built their identity on willpower now claim helplessness. The champions of strength speak of coercion. Responses vary. Cold silence. Hard laughter. Occasional gunfire. What shocks Richter most is not the hostility. It is the realization that British restraint had never been weakness. It had been control. And control can snap. By late June, panic begins to creep into SS ranks. Officers start tearing off their insignia. The twin runes, once symbols of pride, become liabilities. Collar patches are ripped away. Medals buried in shell craters. Identity documents burned. Richter witnesses it himself. His second-in-command methodically strips every sign of SS affiliation from his uniform. "They're not taking us anymore," the man says quietly. When they see the runes, they see everything. Some attempt to blend with Wehrmacht prisoners. Others discard jackets entirely. But British troops learn what to look for. Blood-type tattoos beneath the arm. Posture. Age. Bearing. You can remove cloth. You cannot remove reputation. Reports begin filtering upward. By early July, British High Command is aware of irregularities. Bernard Montgomery issues reminders emphasizing proper treatment of prisoners. Discipline is reasserted. Military police presence increases. There are practical reasons. Prisoners provide intelligence. Britain must maintain moral authority. Future war crimes trials will require testimony. But the timeline matters. Weeks pass before firm control returns. And even then, enforcement is uneven. In those weeks, something fundamental changes. SS units begin fighting harder, retreating less, destroying identification before potential capture. Whether surrender is universally refused or not, they believe it might be. Belief alters behavior. Klaus Richter survived June 17th, not because the British accepted surrender, they do not, but because American forces reach his position first. He spent the remainder of the war in a POW camp in Kansas. Wheat fields stretch to the horizon. Guards are polite. Red Cross inspections are routine. Everything the Geneva Conventions promise is provided. The contrast is not lost on him. In post-war interviews, he returns repeatedly to that afternoon south of Cannes. "We thought the rules didn't apply to us," he says. "We believed strength exempted us. And then we discovered that when you break the rules first, you may not be able to appeal to them later." British soldiers carry their own burden. Some feel no regret. Others struggle quietly. They had buried friends executed after surrender. They had seen evidence of systematic brutality. And when SS hands rose in the air, some simply could not see them. Was it justice? Was it revenge? In the exhaustion and fury of Normandy, the distinction blurred. But here is the crucial difference. The British Army, imperfectly and gradually, pulled back from the edge. Formal procedures resumed. Prisoner processing normalized. The leash on violence tightened again. Because civilization requires maintenance. It requires choosing restraint when abandoning it would be easier. 3 kilometers south of Cannes, where Richter once stood with his hands raised and unacknowledged, there is now a memorial. Flags ripple in the wind. Names are engraved in stone. It does not mention refused surrenders. It does not recount the bitter weeks when rules frayed, but it stands for something larger. War pushes everyone toward barbarism. The SS embraced it as doctrine. The British were pushed toward it by rage, then forced themselves back. That difference matters. The Geneva Conventions are not automatic shields. They are mutual agreements. You protect my prisoners. I protect yours. Break that compact, and the structure weakens. The SS dismantled it first. Then they faced the consequences. In that field of trampled wheat, Klaus Richter learned something his training never taught him. Real strength is not domination. It is restraint. And restraint is hardest when anger feels justified. Civilization is not automatic. It is a decision. One side stopped making that decision long before June 1944. For a few dangerous weeks, the other nearly did. One ideology collapsed beneath its own brutality. The other endured, because it chose to restore the rules it had nearly abandoned. And in that quiet moment, when British soldiers walked past raised hands without slowing, the lesson of Normandy revealed itself. If you break the rules of war, you may one day stand beneath the same sky, hands lifted in surrender, and discover no one is obligated to see you.